Hi everyone. Today's video is going to be interesting, to say the least. I've decided I'm going to film all the way through and I'm not going to edit this video at all. The only things I'm going to do are put a song in the background and my intro video. But that's it. I'm not going to be editing out anything. I mean, you saw me press the button to start recording. You're going to see me press the button to stop it. And also, I'm going to limit this video to 15 minutes. As soon as that 15-minute mark hits, that's the end of it. I'm gonna try to keep track. I might lose track, but I'm gonna try my best. And partially that's because I don't have time to edit this video, but let's just pretend that's not the case. And let's pretend I'm doing it because we're talking about time today. And time is so complicated. So bear with me if I fumble on my words and have to kind of regather my thoughts, bear with me. But also I think that's a great way for you to see that science is difficult sometimes, and some of these ideas are merely just thought experiments or concepts right now and need a lot more scientific discovery and research done on them. So with that being said, I'm cutting into my 15 minutes. I'm going to be doing a very basic everyday kind of look. Actually getting ready for work, so this is perfect. I finally get to wear a makeup look out and not wash it off after a video. So let's get started. So let me show you what I do to first start my makeup. I use this sunscreen. By the way, there's a mess in my bedroom. I'm filming somewhere else. You're really seeing like the bare bones of what I usually do in my life. So don't focus on the mess behind me, focus on this mess. So yeah, I always put sunscreen. I kind of use it as a moisturizer, which probably isn't great, but so far so good. Also, I use a little bit of primer. And just for the sake of time, I'm not going to show you everything and, you know, try to get you to read the bottles, but I do put everything in the description box so that you can look at it and use it later. And normally I start with my eyebrows, which I've already showed you how I do my eyebrows. So while I do them, I'm gonna start talking about science. And of course I didn't lay anything out, so I'm gonna have to look for everything. And that's gonna be tough because I'm not wearing glasses and I can see, but it's a little more complicated than seeing clearly. Okay. Let's see if I can multitask and function correctly. So time. Now we've all heard of Isaac Newton, we've all heard of Albert Einstein. You know, these guys are very famous for, you know, different things. Einstein is probably most famous for his theory of relativity. And of course his equation, E equals mc squared. So we're going to be talking about his theory of relativity. But let's first start with the basics of what people believed about time before he came out with that theory. So, if the world was a stage, people believed that time would be that stage. Hopefully that makes sense. And that people, things, activities, everything else would be actors, you know, the lights, the music, but time was the basis for everything, that it never changed depending on what the actors on that stage would do. It wasn't variable. Time is just time, and that's the end of it. Everything kind of revolves around time just functioning in a linear way. Just, you know, the past is the past, the present is the present, the future is the future, and that's it. And that was accepted. It's a very comfortable thing to believe, because if you believe anything else about time, it starts to get really complicated. So, of course, Albert Einstein had to come up with a different way to understand time, and that was his theory of relativity. At least it included a discussion about time being relative instead of absolute. Because before, time was absolute, nothing can change it, at least the concept of time. And then Albert Einstein brought up the idea that time is actually relative. So in our example of a stage and a play, time would actually just be another actor. And it would be variable. It would depend on what the other actors are doing, what the script says, that kind of thing. So it's really dependent on everything else around it. And I do have notes down here. They're not very thorough, but if I look down, that's why I'm looking down and pausing. This is very hard. I'm not looking forward to rewatching this video without editing. So, okay, speed of light. Now, if you've taken a science class or even a math class, I'm sure talks about the speed of light too. You've talked about that, where C is the letter that stands for the speed of light, and I believe it's 2.998 times 10 to the 8 meters per second. If I'm wrong, I will put something in the description to correct that. But that is the speed of light, as far as I remember. And it was proven to be constant. And the scientists are Albert Michelson and Edward Morley, who actually proved that light is constant. And they had to prove that because Albert Einstein was questioning that. Because, oh man, it's gonna be hard to do makeup and talk about this because I have to use my hands. Because in Albert Einstein's theory of relativity, it's essentially saying that, let's say you are standing still and there's a train passing by and there's somebody else on that train. Time is relative to where you are, and it's your perception of it based on whether you're on that train moving and whether you're on the ground watching it. So you're watching somebody else move, and so their time is relative to your position and your time, and vice versa. So he was questioning, okay, well, if you have two mirrors, for example, like both my hands are mirrors, and you have a light beam bouncing back and forth, so it's going to this mirror and bouncing back up to this one, back and forth. And that's also the kind of concept with a light watch, which I need to look more into, like, if certain watches function this way. But essentially there are watches that are called light watches, and they function in the way where a light beam passes between two mirrors and then it hits a detector, and each time it passes between it, it hits the detector and there's a second, or, you know, whatever time it's set to detect you on. So he saw that and he thought, okay, well, if you have one of those light watches on Earth and you're not moving, it's pretty straightforward. You just have it going back and forth, back and forth. And the equation for speed is distance over time, right? So you have it going a certain distance, and then you have it over time, that certain amount of time it's set to. Very, very straightforward. But what if you're on a spaceship? Or what if you're in a car? Now, the example of a spaceship, let's say that spaceship could go the speed of light, and you have that watch with you, that light watch, and it's going up and down, up and down. But let's say you're outside of that spaceship watching it go, and it's relative to your position. So you're seeing that light watch go back and forth, but it's also moving along with the spaceship, right? So not only is it going up and down, it's now going in this direction too. So what you're seeing is more of a triangle shape, okay? Because it's moving up and down and to the side, so like this. And if it goes fast enough, there's a certain oscillation that goes with it. And so the calculation changes. It's not simply just speed equals distance over time. There's more to it now, because now you have a distance on the x-axis along with the y-axis. And if the speed of light can't change, something else needs to change, okay? Because in that equation, speed equals distance over time, that speed is c, your constant for the speed of light. That can't change. And that was proven by those two scientists that I had mentioned before. That's why they had to prove that, because Einstein was essentially saying, well, maybe the speed of light can change. And maybe that's what changes so it can keep up with the math when you have that watch on Earth. But no, they said, okay, you have to get that out of your mind because the speed of light cannot change. So then Einstein was like, okay, so if the speed of light can't change, then it has to be time. It has to. So then he came up with an equation to compensate for that. And I'm gonna be linking a video below that has that equation. I think it's a lot better when you can see it rather than me just saying the equation. So I'll link that below so you can see it. But man, was that an interesting video. So good, because it just lays out the formula for you. And it actually gives an example of if an astronaut goes into space and they're going 0.7 times the speed of light, and they're up there for 5 years. How much time passes on Earth during those 5 years? Is it 5 years on Earth? The answer is no. It's actually 7 years on Earth if you do the calculations. So what does that mean? That means that time slows down the closer to the speed of light you go. And in fact, if you can go the speed of light 100 times, you know, like you're going the speed of light, sorry, I guess it would be 1 time. You're going 1 time, so it's at the speed of light. This is a mess, I'm sorry. Then time actually stands still. So that's quite interesting, and you can prove that through the equation that I'll link below. So the closer you get to the speed of light, the closer you get to time stopping. Now, I'm sure you guys are familiar with this topic because it was in a famous movie. Can anyone guess? That's right, Interstellar. That is a movie that tries to tackle this topic. Okay, hold on, I'm gonna take a break so I can do my eyeliner. Pretty good. So yeah, that movie tries to tackle this topic of time slowing down when you're in space and when you're going closer to the speed of light. And that is why his daughter actually ages faster than he does. And that's why at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, you know, boo, 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 that's why his daughter is a lot older than him by the end of the movie. So you might have thought that was just purely science fiction. No. Now, the fact that she was so much older than him, that might not be the most accurate, but the truth is time slows down the closer you are to the speed of light. And also it depends on gravitational pulls, which was another thing that they tackled in that movie. They got closer to a black hole, so there's a different gravitational pull there. Look at this. Oh man. But yeah, essentially, time is ridiculously hard to understand, and there's not even a set way to understand it in the scientific community. There's a lot of people who disagree with certain ways of understanding it, and it's very complicated. Science just is complicated in general. I mean, science is fact, but there's a lot of gray areas that it's like, okay, even though this is a fact, there's also another variable involved. And that's what happened with time. I mean, Albert Einstein was like, yes, it's a fact that time goes in one direction. Like, you can't go back in time, you can't go forward in time. Time is what it is. But there's a little more to it. There's things that can affect how fast time moves. And so that's very important to address, and you can't just ignore that. Coming up on 15 minutes, I think I'm gonna extend this video a little bit because I do want to mention one more thing about time. So mathematicians, when they talk about higher dimensions, right, past 3 dimensions, they generally think that dimensions are more spatial dimensions, okay? So like you have the y-axis, the x-axis, the z, and then they think that there's another dimension that helps you understand more spatial relations better. But physicists think that there's another dimension, the 4th dimension, and it's time. Now, once again, it's kind of like relative to what field you study, and how you understand time and space and all that. So I'm actually interested to see what you guys believe about it, so leave in the comments what you think, if more dimensions are spatial related or if they're time related. Now you're gonna hear my opinion on it. I think, and this might be biased because I lean more towards physics than math, I think that a fourth dimension would be time. And the way I try to visualize it is like this. Take the world and its three-dimensional sense and freeze it, okay? So, like, just freeze this moment, for example, okay? I'm just sitting here, I'm in 3 dimensions, you know, that's how it is, and then unfreeze it and then freeze it again. I moved a little bit, right? That, to me, is the fourth dimension, where, like, if you take a movie and split it up into its individual, what are those called? Not like screens, but its individual frames. There it is. So you take a movie, split it up into its individual frames, and you put it together. That is time. That is the fourth dimension. Because yes, in a movie it's different because it's kind of two-dimensional, because it's, you know, a flat thing on a screen. But imagine that in life, how each frame is includes your 3 dimensions, but when you put the frames together, you get your fourth dimension, and that's time. To me, that's what I think time is. That's how I feel like it works. That's how I think it relates to dimensions. But also, yes, 100%, time is relative. Hold on. Time is relative in the sense that it changes depending on the situation you're in too. And in fact, if you're on Mount Everest, time runs a little slower for you too. So there are ways that we can see it physically in our world. Also, GPS systems, global positioning system, the satellites for GPS, they're, you know, outside of our atmosphere, they're surrounding Earth. They actually have to account for time slowing down and put that into the equation that they use to find your position and the position of where you want to go. So that's a very personal example that we see every day of how time being relative has to be accounted for, or else, I mean, GPSs couldn't find the right location if they didn't account for that. Very, very interesting. Totally got mascara up here, trying to take it off without ruining everything else. I hope that made a little bit more sense to you. I mean, in general, it doesn't make sense. Like, you can take little things and have it make sense in your brain. Like that example that I gave about the mirrors. I think that's a great way to visualize it, because I mean, you can think about it. Like if it's going also in the X direction, it oscillates like this. So I think that's a really cool way to understand it. I'm almost done my makeup. Almost done. I just want to put a little bit of contour. Just a little bit. I just want to get some color on my face, because right now it's looking very flat. I'm gonna put a third dimension on it. Oh gosh, I'm gonna regret posting this video. Okay, so just taking some more bronzer than contour, this thing, and just kind of blending it here. But yeah, I encourage you to look up videos on what time is. It took me a long time to think of how to talk about it, because wow, is it complicated. I mean, even the top scientists, not that they don't agree on it, but they just can't get to a certain point where it's like, okay, this is what it is, without anything going against it, you know what I mean? It's just very up in the air on how to perceive it sometimes. There are some things that are 100% accurate, that's the way it is, and that's it. But with the discussion of time, it's like, yes, there are accurate things, but then there's things that contradict it. So it just makes it way more complicated than it would be great for it to be, you know? I'm coming up on 20 minutes. I'm gonna try to beat that clock. Putting some blush on real fast. Well, it was great talking to you guys. And I hope this video finds you well and shows how stressed I am most of the time and how ridiculously hard science can be sometimes. But I hope you guys have a great week, and I look forward to my next video, and I hope you guys are looking forward to it too. See ya!